Hey everyone, Kyle once again, and welcome back to the movie review. And on the next review is another anime film from Walt Disney, and it's a film that not too many people talk about much, but if anyone knows about this film or remembers this film, it's because it was a huge flop, considered one of the biggest flops of all time. But at the same time, I do thoroughly enjoy the film. Kind of on the tad bit underrated side, even though it was praised by critics, but still. What I'm talking about is Treasure Planet. This is another one I've been wanting to review for some time, and it's never got around it. But Treasure Planet, I'm sure that some people do like the film, probably because it's a visually good looking animated film. That's one of the highlights. Visually good looking. And I thought it was a good solid voice cast as well. Now, with the film, Treasure Planet, it's based on it's based on the story about Treasure Island, and the film has been in development since the 80s, the mid 80s. That the directors, which I forgot that was directed by the two guys, Ron Clements and John Musker, the guys who directed Hercules, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Moana. I forgot how I mentioned the films those films they directed. I completely forgot they directed this film. And it's funny whether those films are musicals and those are hits. Well, this film was mainly not a musical, and this film flopped. Well, it has one song in the film, but not songs throughout the whole film. So, like, the only film that's not basically a non-musical they did, and it was a flop. While the other ones that they were huge hits. Kind of funny how that turns out. But as I was saying, it's been in development since the 80s, and they said it happened during, it was in 1885 when it was during the production of The Black Cauldron that the directors, it's been in development. They want to get more time on it. They were signed to do The Mouse Detective, and then directing The Little Mermaid, then Aladdin, and then afterwards Hercules. They were just been busy developing all these other Disney films. Finally, they got a chance to get around to making this film finally, and yeah, they wanted to make this right after because they've been making other films. So, but it's been development for a long time, and after finally get a chance to making this film on its opening weekend, the film flopped big time. And it's funny, you want to make a film for so many years, and that can work with a whole bunch of hits, like Jurassic World. A sequel has been in development for a long time, since Jurassic Park 3, and now look at that film. It's been humongous, gigantic hit. Same with the fourth Indiana Jones film, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's been released nearly almost 20 years after The Cape Crusader, and that was a huge hit. So a lot of times, films have been either sequels or films have been in development for a long time. They can be hits, but sometimes when you make a film that's been in development so long, and when it bombs hard, that's very hurtful. You know, it's like, hey, we've got, it's like, hey, we made this film, it was finally getting released, and then it bombed hard. It's like, really, all that hard work for nothing. That type of thing. But I'm not sure how the director has took when the film flopped, so I'm not exactly sure, though. But the film in its opening weekend, it made very little. It made $38 million domestically in the U.S. and total worldwide $109 million on its huge budget of $140 million. It's considered one of the biggest flops of all time. And because usually Disney, Disney's bound to have a few flops here and there because whether it's the traditional animation with Disney or Pixar or the Walt Disney Studios, they've all a bunch of big hits, and they only have very few times that have humongous flops. And this is definitely one and it's by far Disney's, if not their biggest flop of all time for Disney. But critics liked it. It has a 69 what was it it has a 69% IMDb and it has a 7.1 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, pardon me, and a 7.1 on IMDb. And the film was even nominated for Academy Award for Best Animated Film, but it didn't win though. So besides being a huge flop, it wasn't a total loss. It won over with critics and praise from people, and even worth enough to be nominated for an Oscar for animated film. So, at least not that total loss. But I'm sure when the film being a huge flop, they had to. When a film bombs, they usually have to make like a write-off or something like that. But I still like the film. I think it's on a bit of the underrated side. Why? Because people don't talk about it nowadays because it was a huge flop. Maybe that's why. But it was also during the time that in the early 2000s Disney was not having that too many hits. Like with The Emperor's New Groove wasn't that huge of a hit. Home on the Range was a flop. Atlantis: Lost Empire didn't do quite as well. There was I think there was another one. I forget though. But it was in the early 2000s. Disney was not having their huge hits at the time, and this was definitely like the nail in the coffin for the huge disappointments. But I like all those films. And to me, it was like me kind of like a little bit of for this film, like the premise, like the type of adventure was like reminding me of Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Because I used to, back then I was a kid, I used to confuse these two with this film and Atlantis. Kind of like same kind of type of adventure type of thing with the visuals and stuff like that. But still, and I think James Newton Howard did the score. Also did the score for Atlantis. I can't remember. Which I like the score, and it's decently well paced. It wasn't that slow. I think it was decently well paced. It's only on for about 95 minutes, so a little over an hour and a half without the end credits. Probably an hour and a half. But I think it's a well made and film and good solid voice cast. So it's about the film, but it starts with this boy named James or Jim Hawkins, and him and his mother are like the only two humans in the film, because his dad left him and his wife. So, and when he was a boy, he was like fascinated with the story about Treasure Planet, the story about Captain Flint who had all this treasure and stored away in Treasure Planet. He was a pirate from 100 years ago. And now 12 years later, now a teenager, Jim, voiced by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which was kind of like a not really thing for Joseph Gordon-Levitt being in early films, but nowadays, with Inception, Dark Knight Rises, Premium Rush, and now the film Snowden, but the early times with early acting for roles from Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I thought he did a solid job as Jim Hawkins. And the voice of his mother, Laurie Metcalf, I think that was the same. She did the same voice for in the Toy Story films. I think she voiced Andy's mother. Because when I watched the film, hearing that voice, I think that is the same voice of Andy's mother. It has to be, otherwise my hearing is maybe off. But he's been thrown into like his teenage years. He's been getting in trouble and kind of like upsetting his mother. Like he's flying this flying sail a sail. You fly. It's like you sail like one things you do on the water. Basically, it flies. So he gets into trouble by these robot policemen, and this upsets his mother a lot. And one night where a ship crashes, and a guy whose name is Billy Bones, voiced by Patrick McGoohan, and this is like the last film that he did. And he's a pirate, and he has a chest, and he managed to open it before he dies. He gives it to Jim, this gold sphere, and says, beware the cyborg, and then he dies. And then pirates come in, they set the building on fire, which is an inn that the mother owned. The place is on fire, so they go to Delbert Doppler's place. He's like that looks like a dog, and they go to this place, and Jim unlocks the sphere, and it shows this holographic map of the universe, and it's leading up to Treasure Planet. So he wants to go to Treasure Planet to get some treasure to help out, pay to do something right to help with his mom, to do something right for her. So Delbert goes set up a ship and a crew, and they get to the ship called the RLS Legacy, and you have a captain, this female captain, Captain Amelia, voiced by Emma Thompson, which I thought she was one of the highlights of the film. I thought Emma Thompson did really good. That's her character right there, Captain Amelia. Of course, with Disney, again, she played Mrs. Potts in the new Beauty and the Beast. But I liked Emma Thompson in this. And she has a first mate named Mr. Arrow. And the crew is automatically you can tell the crew they're suspicious looking. And you tell they're not the type of crew that the captain would have. And Jim gets thrown in down below to be in charge of this cook, the cyborg that Jim was warned about, and his name is Silver. John Silver. As opposed to the story Long John Silver. He has a robot hand and a robot right hand and leg, and he has this little cute little pink piece of goo that it's a shapeshifter. He calls it Morph. And automatically the Jim is very suspicious of him. That's the thing. That's the cyborg he was warned about. He's just being swapped in the deck, and the crew. The crew is just he's on. He's don't butt into our business. And then you have this spider-like and crab type of alien named Scroop, voiced by Michael Wincott, which he's been in films as well. And with Long John Silver, tell him to don't bother the kid and all that stuff. And the film, even though it has a thing where he's kind of the film, you can say I was saying Long John Silver, but his name is Silver. Or, I don't think they ever call him John Silver, but he's the type of guy who's kind of who kind of acts like the father figure to Jim. You can see that the elements in that to the film throughout the whole film. He's been kind of acting like a father figure. He's also thinking that he's been going soft on him. But like this is where the scene where you have this montage of him doing stuff with Silver, like him cleaning or doing other things like sailing on this boat. There's an extra lifeboats that they're just showing through, and it's visually good looking how space looks. And when he like for instance where when he's cleaning all these dishes, he brings in more, and he's like, and then when it's nighttime, he falls asleep. Silver he cleaned all those dishes, and he's like kind of like impressed, and being a little sentimental, gives him this coat, for like a blanket. So he's just teaching him all stuff like how to tie knots and stuff like that, and he's been acting like more like a father figure to basically like to Jim. And then, but in one instance when this instance where there's a star that goes into a supernova and then it creates a black hole, and they're gonna get sucked into it. So there's like an explosion. They're gonna take advantage of this next explosion to be pushed away from the black hole, and they're trying to reset the sails, secure the lifelines, and Mr. Arrow he gets fallen off it. Then the Scroop guy cuts it and he falls right into the black hole, kills him. But when they get out of there, saying it's all life secure, and Mr. Arrow, and of course, Scroob, give him a sob, so like, oh, he didn't make it, and this and that, and Jim, he gets to play. He's supposed to secure the lifelines, and like, he's like, I checked them, and I swear they were all good and all that. But he blamed himself for that. And Silver, trying to talk him, saying that it wasn't your fault and stuff, but you need to own your course and you need to stick to it, or give him advice to get him out of the mood. And when he follows Morph and he's hiding in a barrel, when he overhears all the crew and Silver said that they're planning to take over the ship, and of course he knows about the Mr. Arrow and all that, and saying that you're going soft on the boy when he says he's not. And so Jim, he's found out. Then they started they're starting to take control of the ship, and Captain Amelia, Delbert, and Jim, they're trying to escape through a lifeboat, and Morph keeps on taking the sphere, which is the map. Hides in this rope, but of course when he takes it, he takes the wrong one. That's Morph, who shaped into it. And they escape onto which they arrive. They arrive onto Treasure Planet. And then Amelia gets hurt right here, and they find a place to hide. And Ben meets this robot that was with Captain Flint, the pirate, from 100 years ago, named Ben, which is he's voiced by Martin Short. And Martin Short, probably one thing is they nitpick on, if they probably thought that he was kind of annoying though, but I didn't see much of annoyance from Martin Short, because I like Martin Short. Because he's been there, because the character, he's been there for so long, because he's missing a piece of his memory, so he's kind of he's a little loopy and all that stuff. And he kind of knows about the treasure because he was with the captain, but he needs to get a piece of his memory, because otherwise he'll start remembering everything. and they find a place to hide, but the crew is there, and John Silver tries to talk with Jim, but Jim knows better. Like, if I get the treasure, I'm not giving it to you. I'm not gonna give nothing to you. I'm gonna have it all for myself. And so they just wait outside, wait for them to get the map. So they have to sneak on back on the ship through a secret tunnel, which they do. By the time they get back, John Silver is already holding the other two hostage. So they use the map to follow the direction, which leads to the cliff. But there's a little thing on the ground which you put the sphere in, and it lights up a way, which is actually a portal, which is how Captain Flint stole treasure, because he uses this as a portal to go places to steal treasure and go in and out. That's how he was able to disappear without a trace. So they push on the hologram where Treasure Planet is, and it leads right into the portal, right in the center of the planet, where the core of it is a whole bunch of treasure, a sphere of treasure, the core of treasure, whatever how you make it. And then they see Jim sees Flint's ship, and they see the skeletal remains of Captain Flint, and he's holding Ben's memory bank. So he puts it back on his head, and he remembers everything because he tells them that all this is a booby trap, because when they first enter the portal, it triggers an alarm, and all things is a booby trap because he has no one to steal Flint wants no one to steal his treasure, so he says it as an explode to the planet to explode. So everything starts to split, the treasure starts falling into this lava. You can see a couple of the bad guys fall into the lava. And so they're trying to escape, and of course to get this, like this cliche that you've seen a lot in films, where Jim is hanging on a wall, trying to fall. He's losing his grip, about to fall in, and Silver, he's holding on to this ship with the treasure, and of course the thing where he has to choose between which one. Of course he chooses to let go of the treasure and save Jim. So, and he's like, "Oh, you let go of the treasure," and he's like, "It's a lifelong exception. I'll get over it." So, Amelia and Delbert, who's flying the ship, the lifeboat, whatever, they managed to fly out, and it's very good. The animation, I think, is very well made. How they're trying to get through. I think some elements, make me kind of reminds me like a Star Wars type of thing. Just how they're trying to get through the explosion, how the planet is exploding, all that. It kind of reminds me of sort of like Star Wars type of vibe. Even where they have, when they have like these guns that shoots lasers. Oh, and I forgot about speaking of one of the bad guys, the Scroop guy, the spider guy. Because when they were trying to get the golden sphere on the ship, and he Scroops onto him, and with Ben, he's like messing with the wires on the ship, and he unhooks the anti-gravity, so because he has this thing with his anti-gravity, so they can stand on the ship without floating up or drifting up. So he chases him all the way up to the mast of the ship, and he's saying, say hello to Mr. Arrow for me, and Jim says, why don't you tell him yourself, and manage to get the upper hand and push him, because the anti-gravity is off, so he gets pushed all the way up into space. Yeah, I forgot about that, mention about that bad guy. So, as they're flying, and they're getting to once again, like I said, good animation, how the whole thing is exploding, and they manage to get through the portal back into to the spaceport, which kind of looks like the moon. You know how for a full moon, half moon, crescent moon, it kind of looks like a crescent moon from afar, but when it zooms in, it's actually a whole one big place. That's the spaceport. So they use the portal to go back to the spaceport, and so as they're leaving that Silver, he was going to use the lifeboat because he doesn't want to go to prison. So, and he tells Morph to look after Jam, and he gives the little moment where he has to say goodbye to him because like I said, he's kind of like acting like a father. He acted like a father to Jam, and so you just want to. You see that Jim is like kind of a little bit upset. He doesn't want him to go. So that was a scene because he's he's been acting like a father to him, so he doesn't want to see him go, but he has to. So, but says hugs him, says his goodbye. He'll scallywag, and he's like kind of laughs at that, and then he sails away. Just before he sails away, he had some treasure on him that in his pocket, so he just goes and gives it to him to help his mother to rebuild the inn. So with the whatever treasure they had, they used to rebuild the inn, make it much bigger, and there's the party at the inn, and Jim, he's been dressed like a military guy, and even the Dilbert and Amelia, they are married. They have children as well. And as the film ends, you have music going, and when he looks in the sky, you see like a cloud make like an image of Silver, and the movie ends. So yeah, so Treasure Planet. I think it's a well-made animated film, and I think why people disown it because it was a huge flop, and hardly people talk about it though. I'm sure there's some people on here that do talk about it though, and probably they do like the film, but overall, not many talk about it because it was a huge flop, so we're not gonna talk about it. But I think if it is, it's still a good movie, and I would say if it was people don't talk about it because it was a huge flop. Part of me puts it kind of bit on the kind of underrated side, but I still like it. It's visually well made, solid voice cast. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Delbert, voiced by David Hyde Pierce, Emma Thompson, Martin Short, Brian Murray as John Silver was solid too. And this whole thing, how this film got so long to made, because this is also the third film was based on the Treasure Island, because there was one from the 1950, and then you have the I forget what was a Treasure Muppets Treasure Island, where you have Tim Curry playing Long John Silver, which I haven't seen that Muppet film forever, because Tim Curry I do enjoy, so if I watch it again I'll like it, because hey, it's Tim Curry as Long John Silver with the Muppets. So, but then they have this film. But as I said, it was a huge flop. Probably because it was released during the Thanksgiving weekend in 2002. Maybe it was released in the summer. Maybe it would have been better. Well, Atlantis was released in the summer. Was considered a disappointment, so I don't think it would have fared much better in the summer either. But oh well. But I also like the score by James Newton Howard. It's a good score, and it's decently well paced. It's not all that too slow, so it's very decently well paced. And also consider that this film flopped big time. Plans for a sequel were canceled. Of course, it's like the same thing with Atlantis: Lost Empire. They want to build this this big water-themed attraction based on Atlantis Lost Empire, but since the film was a disappointment, they canceled that too. Disney plans for a sequel to this, they canceled due to underperformance at the box office, same with Atlantis. And even because of that, Willem Dafoe, he wanted to voice a villain named Ironbeard, but for a sequel, but canceled because of poor box office. Which again, I don't know Willem Dafoe. I would like to see the sequel though, but and have Willem Dafoe as voice of villain. I thought he would have been good because it's Willem Dafoe. You know, he's been a good actor. Yeah, actually, I know he has some duds with films like Speed 2, but I still like Willem Dafoe. But I think if the sequel was made, I would like his voice in as a villain named Ironbeard, kind of like probably based on like Blackbeard or Redbeard or whatever. But and they said looking more on trivia that Jim Hawkins was like based on a part of like James Dean. James Dean, it's kind of hard because I haven't seen. I know I've not seen Rebel Without a Cause. I know that, and it's just kind of hard for me to get the resemblance of what James Dean is. So, but if I would have, then I would understand. I would understand it though. Um, when the song that was playing during the credits was always know you always know where you are. I guess the thing where kind of playing of when Jim was looking at the clouds, you know, wondering where Silver is. So, but yeah, Treasure Planet. It's still an anime film. I would give it a thumbs up. I would. Now, would I prefer Atlantis more? I would probably say Atlantis a bit, just by a little bit more. But regardless, I think it doesn't deserve to be forgotten. For features, visual commentary with the producers of the director revival, making process of additional footage as you watch the film, deleted scenes, game, music video. But it's still worth a watch. And yeah, probably if anyone noticed throughout the whole film, I noticed all this here is gone, shaved off. If anyone didn't notice. But if anyone has not seen Treasure Planet, I would give it a watch. It's still worth a look because it's Disney, and Disney has. I know probably I don't remember what was the last Disney film I did not like though, animated film wise. But it's still worth a look, and it shouldn't be deserved to be forgotten because it flopped hard. Considered one of the biggest flops of all time. Not based on that. But as for from the directors, though, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, Hercules, and Moana, it's still worth a watch. Search from the guys who directed those films. But yeah, that's my review on Treasure Planet. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned on the next movie review. Later.